Okay, hi, and welcome to The Inspired Beatles. Today we're going to take a look at the heroes of the Beatles, which gives some really interesting insights as to why they did what they did. We'll do this simply by listening to their favorite artists. We'll play the original and then the Beatles cover version, dropping the record needle really briskly across the cuts. And I'll give some accompanying commentary along the way. I'm just sort of hacking this thing together. And also, please forgive me ahead of time for the brevity of the clips, but in order to comply with YouTube, we have to do that. We'll go in chronological order, and at the end, I'll review some of the patterns I saw, and you can tell me if you got the same impressions. So let's go to the first album and start with one of their most famous songs, which of course wasn't written by them, but the Isley Brothers. As good as the Beatles version is, I prefer the Isley Brothers. Don't tase me. Again, I think the Arthur Alexander one has more soul. Maybe it's because they rushed through the album, recording it all in one day. But there is a BBC version of this, which is more sensual. One thing we get is the harmonica replacing the saxophone.
It's not the way you smile.
There's a lot of great Beatles covers, but this one, I'm not sure why they did it.
It's not the way you smile that touched my heart.
Great groove, smooth vocals, good cut. The big advantage to the Beatles track here is George's piercing solo. And now we come to the jazz classic Till There Was You, but this version of it is sappy.
But I never heard them ringing.
So I think it was some jazz cut they took the inspiration from. You can tell by the phrasing.
There were birds in the sky, but I never saw them winging.
Yours was the kiss that awoke my heart, a taste of honey.
Notice the differences here in the beat, vocals, instruments.
I will return. I will return. I'll come back for the honey and you. I dream of your first kiss and then a taste of honey.
The move of changing the tempo from a 3/4 waltz to a 4/4 shuffle is fantastic.
I will return.
This middle section has always had a strange, mystical quality to it. Almost all of the covers that they did were in the first few records. So let's move to the second album. Another big Motown hit. Fun, aggressive playing, but a little sloppy.
Yeah, it's a jumping little record. I want my jockey to play.
Lots of happy clappy in the early stuff. Listen to how much emotion is in Smokey Robinson's vocal.
I'm always thinking of you. I love you, and all I want you to do is just hold me, squeeze, hold me, please, hold me, hold me.
Listen closely to these two descending chords. It was pretty subtle, but
The best things in life are free.
I used to wonder why those two chords were out of tune, and it's because they were in the original. But in the Beatles version, it's a little louder.
Telling Mary,
This is cooking.
oh baby, yes baby, woo baby, have me some,
Notice the word difference from having some fun tonight and having me some fun tonight.
yes baby, have me some fun tonight, yeah.
Here's the Beatles studio version, but I think the live versions are much better.
Baby, oh baby, some fun Mona lovely. But now you got a boyfriend right down the street. Baby, what you trying to do? You better slow down. Baby, now you're moving way too fast.
They would often take out some of the campiness of the song and make it a little more edgy.
I'm an old boy, long way from home.
Okay, we found another pattern. We see that George keeps writing these fantastic solos which aren't in the originals. Interestingly, the album Hard Day's Night had no covers. We'll pick up on this important point at the end. So let's go to the next one.
Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music. Any old time you use it. It's gotta be rock and roll music. If you want it.
Whenever the songs got repetitious, they would change them up. So, for example, at the end of the verses here, they would syncopate them.
Jazz. Unless you try to play it too darn fast. I lose the beauty of the melody. Until it sounds like a symphony. Mr. Moonlight. You came to me one summer night.
You can can see why they like this. It has that cool calypso feel.
And from the world you send my girl, Mr. Moonlight.
But unfortunately, the Beatles couldn't pull it off, playing that dreadful funeral organ. This song consistently makes user polls' least favorite Beatles songs. But earlier takes show it a little better, a little looser.
Mr. Moonlight, come again, please. Here I am on my knees, begging if you please.
Once you go back to the original, it makes sense now what they were aiming for. Again, George is going to crush it. Notice how much energy there is in this. The exhaustion of Beatlemania caught up to them at this point.
Hold me close and tell me how you feel. Tell me love is real.
A little vocal creative license here.
Hold me close and tell me how you feel.
Well, how come you say you will when you won't?
You know, to be honest with you, Carl Perkins' voice reminds me of this guy who likes to sing Elvis to his birds.
Your heart that's true. Your heart that's true. Yeah, yeah. I said yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I've been fine. Dressed it up and they calling me. Everybody's trying to be my baby.
Another Carl Perkins rockabilly hit from the pub days.
Everybody's trying to be my baby now. Everybody's trying to be my baby now.
This sounds great, but again, it's interesting how the tempos are slower. They love this one live, played it a lot. Either they played this a lot, or I just listened to it a lot. A little too campy, so they toughen it up.
A bad little kid moved into my neighborhood.
Here's another one that was kind of campy that they edgified.
Make me dizzy, Miss Lizzy. The way you rock and roll, Lizzy. The way you rock and roll.
This is the last one that we'll do from the Beatlemania period on the Help album. And Ringo is going to knock this out of the park.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me.
Then we get no covers for several albums until we reach the last one released, Let It Be, where they sing an old folk song.
Has taken her away, and she never walked down my street anymore. Well, that dirty, no good Robin Maggie May.
Okay, so that's it. Thanks for watching. A couple of takeaways, if you're curious, is that they did a ton of covers, just an amazing amount. Right here, we've only compared official original album releases, not including radio shows, later released outtakes, unreleased outtakes, or any unrecorded songs. This also shows their great range and how they would take a song and twist it to their own likings, whether or not it was changing instruments, tempos, keys, solos, lyrics, or the overall feel. And second, we see that the vast majority of their influences were from African American music. It also gives a lot more insight to their comments that they were so surprised and confused why America would want them when America already had all their great favorite artists, which I think in most cases, they weren't really able to replicate the same emotional soul, same emotional vibe. This is obviously common for any artist that does covers, and it's pretty evident when you play them side by side. It wasn't until they gave those inspirations more of their own voice that Beatlemania took off to the next level. And then third and last, which is not obvious, is that George was just a monster, writing all kinds of classic solos and licks and hooks and transitions, unique chord arrangements. How do we know? Because the arrangements George performed, you do not hear from the original sources. So I hope you enjoyed this little trip. There's more info on other covers that I might cover in the description.